screening and recruitment and how it is aligned to talent management. So before we start, would anybody like to share your thoughts in terms of how hiring is connected to talent management?
Sir, first we need to ascertain what competence is required for our job. Thereafter, that talent is needed in the person we are going to recruit. So hiring is the first place where we have to ascertain the what talent we need to have.
Okay, that's Abhay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good, Abhay. You get a virtual chocolate.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay, great. So today we will talk about, like Abhay said, how talent acquisition and talent management are connected. So, like Abhay rightly said, that this is the beginning. This is where everything starts because you are hiring people and you are hiring people based on certain requirements and certain needs. So, if we were to look at the basic recruitment processes, so you do planning, then you do, you have an HR strategy, you do strategy development, and then you use certain competencies or certain screening mechanisms to ensure that you are able to tap the right talent. So these are three very important parts, and recruitment. This comprises your recruitment process, and all of it has to be linked to your talent management strategy. Because generally, what happens is when you talk of talent management, you talk of how do you increase the productivity of the people on the ground. How do you ensure that the top talent or the best performer, the fast trackers, as they are called, or high potential people, or high pots, as they are called, how do you ensure that these people are able to deliver the best productivity possible for the organization? But we would be missing out on a huge chunk if we do not focus on the recruitment process itself and make sure that it is aligned to your talent management process. Because if you are not focusing on recruitment and if you are just seeing recruitment as a process driven opportunity, simply if you have a hiring plan of 100 people, you are hiring people on the basis of regular normal assessment criteria, then you will have a tough time strengthening your talent management strategy, because all the talent management that you need to do cannot happen in the organization if your talent management strategy is not talking to your recruitment strategy. So therefore it is very critical to start early, start where everything begins, which is with recruitment, and that is where we are going to be looking at. So typically, when we are recruiting, when we have a need, when there is a company which is growing or company which is losing some people and it has to do a backfill, you look at, uh, you know, you plan the whole process typically before the financial year starts. So today we are on the 4th of April. Good companies would already have planned their recruitment strategy and would have published the hiring numbers by within the month of March or even February. So you know that, look at the number of people you need. Then you strategize whether it's make or buy. Do you want to develop some people within your organization for the higher level positions, or do you want to get people from outside? What kind of a profile are you looking at? What sort of a technological ability are you looking at in these profiles? Then where do you wish to where do you wish to see, where do you want to scout for this kind of a talent? Do you want to go to your competitor organizations, Do you want to go to the campuses? Do you want to go to maybe organizations which are not your competitor, but organizations which are good hunting ground? For example, in when you talk of FMCG, which companies do typically people go to when we talk of FMCG? Any thoughts? Which companies we go to when we have to hire for FMCG?
HUL,
Yes, HUL. Very good. Any other organization?
we have Pidilite, Asian
Uh,
Paints, Cremica.
Absolutely. ITC, Asian Paints, HUL.
Tata Chemical.
Okay. So good. Yes, there are some typical organizations which we look for, and where we know that you will get some ready and good talent, and maybe not at a very high price point. HUL may be expensive, but others may not be very expensive. So also which when to look, so suppose I am in the talent acquisition team, and I know that last year we hired about 800 people, and this year again we will need 8 to 1000 people, 800 to 1000 people, or maybe even more. So as a strategic talent acquisition professional, what I will do is, in the beginning, before the year even begins, I start warming up my leads. I start connecting with consultants. I start connecting with senior people in the industry. I start connecting with my network, to look for the right talent to acquire. And then once you have a fair idea, then you start activating your source and selling as in you start selling your company, saying that we are the best place to work. We are XYZ. And then you start screening and screen with the purpose in mind in terms of are you backfilling positions? Are these strategic positions? Are these positions, you want to maybe fill in advance of any opportunity coming up, because you know that there are some opportunities which are hot in the pipeline, and so it's best to have some talent in place already. So those could be, some of the thoughts when you are recruiting. Anybody who's from talent acquisition over here?
So I'm working in the talent acquisition team.
Okay, great. So Priyanka, typically, what practices do you follow in the beginning of the year? How do you go about it?
During the year starting, we prepare the AOPs. So basically, we understand the trend of the last year's hires, and accordingly, we plan the hires for for the next year. I mean, the coming year. So we have the positions which are being approved as per the protos, and accordingly, we plan the hiring structure for the year.
Right. Okay, great. And Priyanka, which industry are you in?
So I'm currently working in retail. I work with Walmart retail. Now
Okay,
it's merged with Flipkart.
okay, okay, great. Uh, and so that we ensure, last but not the least, is evaluation and control. What is the quality of people you're getting, a check and a balance in place to ensure that we are aligned to the plan, as Priyanka mentioned and as we discussed earlier. So these are some of the things that probably you would start doing in the beginning of the year. Okay. So now hiring has been, there have been very significant changes that are happening. And, anybody who's there, Priyanka and others, particularly those who are working for third party recruiters, they feel it all the more. So nowadays, things are becoming very fluid in the job market. So 10 years ago, companies were very large and distinct, and of course they still are. But now more and more people are, like you have startups which are very small organizations. Some of the startups are large organizations, but they are very fast moving organizations. They are nimble organizations which do not have too much of a baggage or a bureaucracy. Okay. So like the second point says, in the past there were distinct individual entities. Now they are turning into amorphous interdependent entities, and they are now working with their suppliers, third parties, even customers, to create just in time products that delight their customers and made at the right time with the right mobile processes in the high. And mobile processes actually, not mobile. So basically, what we are saying is that there are new ecosystems which are emerging, and you have just-in-time production, by which it is meant that all your stock should be ready for consumption, and as and when you need more inputs, they will keep coming in, but they may not be available in your warehouses or being stocked. So it is like a because the more you have things in stock, the more expensive things become. So if you have just in time products, then things are cheaper, faster, more nimble. So earlier, all the companies, they had their workers in house, and they were permanent employees. People used to spend 20, 30 years working in a company. But now more and more people are freelancers or on contract or temporary workers. And you have a core of people who are your fixed employees, who are your long-term employees. And the demographics in the market are changing globally. Countries like Japan is the second biggest economy in the world, and also Russia and some other European countries, their economies are growing, but their populations are shrinking. So therefore, they don't know how their economy is going to be handled in the near future, particularly Japan. And in the US and Western Europe also, there is a deficit in working age population. So while in Africa, there is going to be a surplus. So basically, there are big trends which are changing. And of course, now you have technology. And with COVID, we have seen that we are completely dependent on technology. The new generations are coming in to the workforce. Companies support work models that support their teams, attract. Uh, yeah, Bhumi, I think you're trying to say something.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to add to the last slide.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays there is one more thing that is, erupting, which is economy.
Yeah,
Yes, wherein, just, I think that is the contract economy that you are trying to explain.
right.
Sorry, contract workers that you're trying to explain.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So both of it actually, contract as well as digital, because digital is changing everything. Particularly during COVID, we are seeing, for example, we are talking over Zoom now, and people are using Zoom, Team, Google Meet, so many other platforms, and not only just meeting, but people are using, for example, in my company, there are a lot of people who are working from home, and they have uh, strong VPN connections with firewalls to protect data, and they are able to work remotely. And almost I'm talking about 5,000-6,000 people just working from home. So that's how things are changing. Plus, people are working on contract. It's also known as the gig economy. There are people who are experts who advise you on one thing and then move on to another organization. They are expensive resources, so the companies typically don't hire them on a full-time basis, but they use the resources, and then it's on a use and pay method. So if they use consultants, like Bhumi mentioned that people are on contract. So that's how things are changing. So it's a brave new world of work, because all the trends that we have talked about is happening in India, is happening globally, and what it results in, that you have a very fluid marketplace. You have talent which is moving in and out of various companies, talent which is available at a price, but if you want to keep the talent in house, that's more expensive, and you may or may not have enough work for that particular talent. Plus, technology is making it very easy for you to have a small asset base but a bigger impact. So if you look at Uber, or if you look at Ola, so their asset base is very limited. They don't own most of the taxis that they profit from. So the taxis are owned by the people, but they have to ensure that the people who are driving, they are aligned to the values that they promote, the competencies that are required. So it is becoming all the more difficult today. So, Priyanka, do you think that because you are there on the front line, do you think that things are becoming a bit more difficult, or maybe difficult is the wrong word? Things are definitely becoming more challenging, and
Yes,
while of
sir.
course the solutions are also there. What do you think?
Yes, sir. Things are getting changed because yes, after the integration with Flipkart and Walmart, there are things which are again going to change a lot. So we're currently working on that itself.
Okay. Yes, I can imagine. These are two large companies. Walmart is one of the biggest companies in the world, and
Right.
that has very strong processes in place and is
Yeah.
very powerful in retail. So great. I'm sure you are having an exciting time.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so moving on, when we are selecting people, we look for some basic criteria: the formal education, the experience, and past performance. In some profiles, like for pilots or for security, you also need to look at physical characteristics, and then most importantly, you have to look at the personality characteristics. So, all of that makes a big difference. So these are some of the criteria that you look at, and this is typically the talent selection process that people follow. So you have various levels of screening. You have an initial screening, then if they are able to clear one level, they go on for complete their application. If there are tests which are pre-tests which are done, then there is a comprehensive interview. Some people have different kinds of interview. So you may have a HR round, then you may have a functional round, then you may have, if it's a leadership position, you may have other leadership rounds. While at the same time, at the back end, your background verification is going on, your medical check is going on, and so there are many filters through which people typically come in. Also, the filters at the level of filters depends on the level that you are hiring talent at. It could, if it's a frontline worker or somebody who is very close to the frontline, maybe your assessments and your filters may not be very strong or too many. But if you are taking somebody at a decision making level, somebody who's a manager, who's a DGM, AVP, VP, then your filters become even more stringent. So, and each company has its own, and I'm sure Priyanka's company also has very strong filters, because it would not be easy to be able to, get into a company like Walmart and Flipkart. So,
Right.
Priyanka, would you like to share some of the filters that you have in place?
So filters in sense the process.
Yeah, the hiring process that you have.
Right, sir. So the hiring process, basically the major filter that we face here is on the food part. So since FSSI comes into picture when we have any positions for the food roles, right? So it has to be 100% compliant and compliant, and we have to hire people only with a specific education background, because that's get verified from the government as well as the FSSI. Also, for any particular store that Walmart comes into picture, there are almost around 63 to 70 licenses which are there to be at place. Only and only then we get a go ahead from the government or the local bodies to open up a particular store. If I talk about furthermore processes, any particular candidate who's been shortlisted has to have all the rounds completed, and it cannot happen that even though he is, not cleared any one single round of interview, then that person doesn't get through the to the next level. In the background verification, we have a particular process that the person should have the background verification should be clear in all the aspects, or else the candidate's offer gets revoked even though the candidate is out of his previous job.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, I think applying to Walmart, Flipkart seems to be a bit risky. So I will avoid for some time.
Yes.
Unless Priyanka can help us. Okay, thanks, Priyanka. So moving on, this is a process from Telenor, which is in the telecom industry. So you have recruitment process, you have assessment center, you have you know you have certain job descriptions, and then it takes a certain amount of time for every offer to convert. So, but this is again very typical. So 6 to 8 weeks. When you are recruitment for permanent and temporary employees, it takes 6 to 8 weeks. And 7 key elements: you identify the hiring need, prepare the job description, then sourcing and vacancy announcement, screen and shortlist applicants. Then you have assessment centers, and then you finalize the candidates and offer, and then the acceptance or rejection of the offer. So fairly simple, straightforward. But yes, every company has multiple ways of doing it, and in some companies there are too many rounds. uh, as I mentioned that I used to work for GE Capital and worked there for 6 years, and my interview uh, lasted from 10 o'clock in the morning to about 9:30 in the evening, so 11 and a half hours with multiple rounds. And while they were of course trying to make it convenient that we will close everything today, but you can imagine candidates who were making it to the last round, they were there for about 11 to 12 hours. And after 11 to 12 hours, there are not too many people who can perform very well. So different companies have the different processes, but this is just one example from Telenor. Okay, so moving on, the three common methods are, testing, gathering information about the candidate, and the interviewing part. So all three are very important. So how the typical process is: you identify the strategic intent, identify what capabilities are you looking for. That is when you kind of create your job descriptions. Then you identify the talent and the pools. So whether you want to hire people from the competitor or from any particular talent pool, from relevant universities or IT companies or etc. And then you decide whether to develop or deploy. Then you motivate and retain, and evaluate and review. So that is again typically the life cycle that you have. So moving on, like earlier we were discussing and Abhay had mentioned, now in this entire process, identifying the competencies against which you are going to be hiring is very, very important, because it is here that your talent acquisition process is aligned to your talent management process. If you miss out on this aspect, then it is very difficult to make up later, and you are left chasing your tail to make up, because this makeup never really happens in a proper and complete way. So therefore it is very important to understand how do you recruit against a set of competencies. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, many organizations don't really have a competency framework, and therefore they are not sure what competencies to hire people against. What specifically, what are the skills or the behaviors that they are looking for? So it is not very clear. Sometimes organizations don't have a competency framework, but they at least are clear that these are the metrics that I want to people want to hire people on. Okay, but sometimes people just follow the interviewing process. If they find the candidate okay, then they align the candidate, offer the candidate. And I've even come across organizations which are very efficient. They are very good in terms of screening, finding candidates, screening candidates, interviewing them very well, and then rolling out a job offer, ensuring that every candidate goes through a good experience while they are being screened. But unfortunately, they don't have a very robust competency framework, and as a result, they are hiring somebody who is meets the expectations of the recruiters, but they may or may not be aligned to the competencies or the values that the company has. So, which is a very high risk activity. And my experience has been that many companies are not even aware. And any thoughts, anyone on this aspect? Abhay, would you like to share the thoughts?
Sir, I am working in LIC, so we generally hire generalists, means and thereafter we develop their competency on the basis of requirement. So we do not look for at the time of recruitment, but later on we on the job training and then various training modules we means people are getting to acquire the skills. But because the government organization, but in private organization they are very limited people, so they first find out what specific skill they require. So that is the way we are working.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Anybody else? Bhumi, any thoughts?
Sir, I do not work in the corporate environment. I am from the education industry. Though it is adult learning, but then yes, I have not worked as an HR or something so far.
Okay. 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 Fine. So we will move on. We will discuss some more about this, and then we can discuss again. So so okay. Priyanka, would you like to read this?
Yes. What is competency? Competency is an underlying characteristic of an individual that is usually related to criteria referenced superior performance in a job. Underlying characteristic, deep and enduring part of a person's personality and can predict behavior in a wide variety of situations and job tasks. Casually related means that a competency causes or predicts behavior and performance. Criterion referenced means that the competency actually predicts who does something well or poorly as measured on a specific standard or gauge.
Thanks, Priyanka. So a competency is a very heavy term. It is a very heavy word because it talks about underlying characteristics of an individual that is causally related. Actually, it's not casually, it's causally. That's different from casually because it is causing. Okay, it is resulting in, it is the after effect. So it is related to criteria referenced superior performance. So criteria reference means that I have a benchmark. Let's say uh, a salesman can close 10 sales a day. So a good salesman can close 10 sales a day, so which is brilliant. Now somebody who's not so good, or still good but not so good, who's not excellent, maybe doing 5 sales a day, and somebody who's okay does 2 to 3, but somebody who's not good maybe not doing any sales in 10 days. So criteria referenced is that there is a standard or a gauge, and you look at that what is superior performance here, and we look for competency is an underlying characteristic, which means that it is not perhaps always available for you to see on the surface, but it is there somewhere in the person. Okay. So it is deep and enduring part of a person's personality and can predict behavior in a wide variety of situations and job tasks. So these are some things that are there as part of a person's personality, and they can predict the behavior in a wide variety of situations and job tasks. So basically, when we are screening, we have to look out for these abilities, these aspects of a person's personality, to see whether they will be able to uh, deliver the right kind of performance in the context that the organization is going to provide. Okay, so competency is not just skill, it is skill behavior and their motivation level and how they consistently perform, across various situations. So sometimes people say, what is the difference between a skill and a competency? So skill is simply the ability to perform. Competency is the ability to perform and the will to perform. Okay, not just the skill to perform, but also the will to perform. That is when it becomes a competency. Okay, so moving on. Yeah,
Does it have anything to do with, um, I mean, efficiency? Is it the skill and will, or also the efficiency? I mean, just to get a clarification from you.
so Bhumi, efficiency is the output. Okay, if you have the skill and the will and you are performing, then inevitably you are going to be efficient. Okay,
Okay.
And sir, is it behavioral and more quantifiable?
behavioral and
Quantifiable, the competency.
yeah. So yes, Vanita, it is quantifiable, but not 100% quantifiable. Okay, so some of it is quantifiable and some of it is not. But there are skills, there are subjective skills within when you are interviewing people, where you can gauge whether this person has that ability or doesn't have that ability.
So it is better to have a competency in a job description or skill.
So you should have a competency. You should have also what is the skill associated with that and what is the attitude associated with that. I will show you. We will talk about. I will give you an example.
Sir,
Okay, thanks, sir.
Yeah.
so far I thought like competency is related once the candidate is selected, whereas skill is more of the talent acquisition part. I mean, while you are hiring a person, and also while promoting or something, you take into consideration the skill, and I mean, at the time of promoting, definitely competency as well. But then during the first hiring, I mean, initial acquisition, is it the competency that is taken care of? I mean, taken into consideration, or skill, as
So
Benita asked?
yeah. So Bhumi, very good question. That is exactly what I'm saying. That at the first hiring, people should look at the skill, but they should also look at the competency. Unfortunately, most organizations simply look at skill. They do not look at what is the attitude of the person, what is the ability of the person. We just simply look at, what is the degree he has got, what is the experience he's got. So perhaps he will be able to do this. We may or may not have a test, and then we move that person. But the person may have the skill, but may not have the will or the desire to grow or learn. So it is important to look for the right attitude. One of the most successful companies in the US is a company called Southwest Airlines. In spite of all the other airlines not making a profit or even collapsing as a company, Southwest Airlines has been consistently delivering profit across many, many years. And they say that we hire for attitude and train for skill. When we are hiring, the person may or may not have absolutely right skill, but we gauge the attitude of the person. If the person is willing to learn, if the person is customer friendly because they are in the hospitality industry, then they are very happy to hire that person and then train that person. Is it making sense?
All
So
right.
many organizations, they conduct a behavioral round.
Right, right.
So does that also involve competency, to check on the competency rather?
Yes, Priyanka, absolutely. Because when you're doing a behavioral round, you are looking at the person's fitment in terms of behaviors. Now, many different companies
Oh,
have different behaviors or different values or cultural pillars that they want to encourage. Does
yes,
this person have that particular value or not? That is what they look for.
right, right. So the questions that they typically put across is on the team management, on certain situation-based questions, and that is how I think they identify it.
Exactly, exactly.
Thanks.
So a sum total of
Yeah.
hard skills and soft skills make up competencies is what you mean over here, sir?
Bhumi, can you just say that again?
Yes, combination of hard skills and soft skills is what.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's right. So, I used to work for a startup once, and so this startup had this culture. We started on a very nice note, and the person who was the funding, the person who was the financier, he came from a very well-to-do business family, and he wanted that our culture should remain very, uh, very accessible, very humble, and at the same time, we should be very committed to our targets. So he had this, so all the initial people were handpicked by him, and we were all very friendly and very easy, very accessible. Even the senior people did not have an attitude that they were senior. Everybody used to be very friendly and intermingle with each other without a sense of hierarchy. Now, he said that as the company started growing, he was afraid that now we may get people who are not like us. So what he did was, there would be first two rounds where we would be checking for the skill that the person had. Once the person cleared that knowledge skill, then what we did was we aligned them for a informal interaction. So three old employees of the company would take out the new person, or the person who was, who has cleared all the rounds, for a cup of coffee. And we would go to barista or somewhere, and we would have coffee with the new person. And in that interaction for at least 1 hour or 60 minutes, we would, gauge the person, that is this person somebody we can work with comfortably? Does this person have those value orientations or not? And then we would give a report to HR whether we were green or not green with that person. So that was a way of ensuring that everybody had similar behaviors in the company and had similar preferences in the company. So, so that's an example of, like Priyanka said about a behavioral round. Similarly, we may not call this a behavioral round, but it was an informal checkpoint. Okay, so So, so basically, you use a JD to identify the key competencies that you need for each profile. Now, this is very important that very often the JDs are not written properly, and people just create some JD from Google and float it around. So, in the job description, you should have what are the skills that you're looking for, then also what are the specific attitudes that you're looking for. Okay, then through group discussions, through with top performers, PMS data, etc., what are the competencies and behaviors that you want? And list the identified behaviors to differentiate levels of performers and formalize the behaviors in a framework which can be used by planning and talent acquisition. So here are different types of competencies. So some companies, they have core competencies which all individuals in the company are expected to possess. So goal of
just a second, sir. Can you ask everybody to mute their mic? There is a background noise.
Okay. Please mute your mic, everyone. Anybody who's not speaking, you can mute your mic. If you wish to speak, just unmute yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. So core competencies are those competencies which every individual in an organization is expected to have. Okay. So the goal of core competencies is for individuals to be able to perform in diverse functions throughout the organizations, and these are reflections of a company's values, culture, business imperatives. For example, when you are joining a Tata company, you are supposed to be uh, you are supposed to be accessible, somebody who's fairly humble, somebody who's skilled, somebody who has a positive attitude. These are things that they look for. Now there are another set of competencies which are skills and abilities needed within several roles. So for example, I'm in HR, but tomorrow they are saying that, okay, why don't you spend some time in procurement department? So I will move towards procurement, and there I may, pick up some competencies uh, which are more to do with procurement. So for example, more, interpersonal skills. Okay, better interpersonal skills, because I will be speaking to many vendors, many third party consultants. So therefore, and of course, next and very, very importantly are the technical skills or the role competencies. Every role, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's HR, whether it's operations, every role has technical attributes, and you have to have those technical competencies. So you can see that there are core competencies which are basic to every company. There are some competencies which are transferable and ensure that there is movement from one department to another or even within the department. And then there are functional competencies or technical competencies which are required in every department. So when you are hiring, it's important that you have, suppose I'm hiring for a particular department, you should have these competencies available for you. And you should know how to screen the people you are hiring. So we will come to that.
So, sir, if we have to give an example, for example, communication, would that be a competency or a skill?
So it would be a competency. It's not a skill. One part of communication is skill, when you are speaking well, when you are listening actively. But the desire to communicate, the desire to be humble and actually listen to someone, that is an attitude. And the skill and the attitude together make the competency.
Okay, so if I'm talking, so the capacity, the language would be falling under the technical competency, and
Absolutely.
this. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So every competency would be divided in this way when
Yes.
you are talking of description. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Welcome. Okay, so here is an example from a company. Now let's say they have these core competencies. So their core competencies are customer orientation. Every employee should be oriented towards customer. So this is a company not in India, from outside, but I'm just sharing the example. Then process and quality focused. Every employee should be focused on quality and process. Then achievement orientation. They should be oriented towards achieving. People should not be like, okay, I need to close this today. Let me close it tomorrow, or let me close it next week. Everybody is, achievement oriented and wants to contribute regularly to the company. Should be a good communicator. And as we discussed, communication simply would not mean their ability to communicate, but also their desire to communicate. And then they should be oriented towards teamwork. They should not be people who are uh, just focused on achieving individually or themselves, but they are people who are oriented towards teamwork. So therefore, they are invested in the success of the team and not just their own success.
But sir, if we take this example, like Haya, if you're talking, so communication for a group leader would not be the same as that of a worker. So how is this then competency framework applied to people?
Yes. So I'm showing you one part of it. These are core competencies which apply to everybody. Now, when you go to the second level drill down, you will see that customer orientation applies differently to different people. Achievement orientation is different for different people. Similarly, communication is different for different people. So if I am a frontline worker, my communication should be to let's say my customer, to let's say my senior. It should be simple communication to get my point across and my desire to get my point across. But if I am the vice president of the company, then my communication would be more sensitive. It would be geared towards multiple levels. It would be, uh, you know, humble. It would, put the points across as clearly as possible so that various cross sections of the company is able to understand. So the level of communication at each, the kind of communication that happens at each level would change. But it's a common competency across levels. That's why it is a core competency.
Okay, so these difference like you showed for each one, they are also called core competencies only, or they are labeled something differently?
These are core competencies, but then leadership may have certain other competencies. For example, strategic decision making. That may not be required of a frontline worker because they don't really have to be bothered about strategy. But
Yes.
the person at a senior level, he or she has to be, worried about strategy. So therefore,
So it would still be labeled under communication core competency or communication of a leader that way, but it will still be core competency only.
yes, it would be core competence.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Okay. So, so for example, now you do a second level drill down. So you say that, okay, competency. What does each of this mean? Suppose achievement orientation. So let's say up till manager level, it will mean drive for results, accountability, ownership, planning, organizing. Then process and quality focus. So it would mean, so basically there is a drill down of, it's not simply one word. It is, it can be further drilled down, and there are many actions coming out of each thing. For example, teamwork. What does teamwork mean? If I do not mention what it means, you will think all kinds of things. Whereas here for higher water, it means respect for diversity, collaboration, and partnership management. Okay. Similarly, customer orientation means understanding customer needs, meeting customer requirements, sensitivity, and respect. So, so therefore, each competency will have, many meanings coming out of it, and then the meanings also can change level wise. Like I talked about, communication means something to the frontline worker, means something else to the leader. But communication, as such, as a competency, it is there across for everybody. Now, here you can see that, for example, achievement orientation. Now it is divided into 4 levels, you know, executing, applying, guiding, shaping. So executing is somebody who's at the front line. So for her, it means works hard to meet goals, targets given to him or her, displays accountability and responsibility, plans work. Now, people who are, let's say, team leaders, assistant managers, deputy managers, for them, it would be taking initiative to go beyond assigned goals, displaying flexibility, displaying accountability, planning activity for the team. So now, if you notice, it is not just for themselves as individuals, it is more for the team. Then guiding would be for, let's say, managers, senior managers, AVPs, etc. So focusing on achieving challenging goals, involving employees in goal setting, understanding strengths and weakness of team members, etc. And shaping would be for the leaders. So their achievement orientation would be different, establishing systems and processes. Because the value that they are bringing, the power that is given to them is huge. So they cannot be simply working hard, but they have to work hard to ensure not their individual success, but overall how they are impacting the organization. Okay, the whole of higher waters. So for them, achievement orientation would mean something different, taking accountability and ownership for entire organization's goals and outcomes, establishing and institutionalizing planning process. So can you see the difference now, Vinita, Bhumi? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we were also going through a little other things. I mean, reading through other things as well. Just a moment.
Okay, okay. Okay, can I move to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
So that was just an example of achievement orientation. Similarly, you have for communication, you have for teamwork, all of it changes. Now, in hiring, we have to ensure that uh, we are able to screen the profiles very well. So you can have testing is the most common way that people screen profiles. So you can have cognitive ability test, personality test, physical ability test, integrity, drug test, work sample testing. You can do all of this if you want. Okay, and many companies do all of it. Some companies do some of it. Now, I want to, you know, now get deeper into this discussion around abilities. Now, the problem with ability is that it's not easy to uh, find out the ability of a person, the attitude of a person. It's easy to find out the ability and the skill of a person. So, for example, we are like a iceberg. You can see certain things about every individual on the surface. You can see their behaviors, you can see their habits, you can see their skills, but you cannot see their values. That is under the surface. You cannot read their thoughts. You cannot understand their emotions. You cannot understand the traits that they have or the motivations that they have. Okay, so those are deep under the water. So we are all like icebergs. You can see a part of the person on the surface, but most of the person, which is the what is actually propelling an individual, that is beneath the surface. So, for example, knowledge and skills, that is there on the surface. You can see the knowledge, you can see the skill of a person, but the values, attitudes, these are not easy to see on the surface. The traits and the motivations, these are not easy to see on the surface. They are all under the water. But the abilities and the habits, that is something you can see on the surface. So knowledge, skill, ability, habits, these are all things which you can quickly test people for. But it's not easy to put your finger on people's values, attitudes, traits, and motivations. These are all under the surface. But if you are very skilled as a interviewer, or if you use certain psychometric tools like Hogan assessments, you can also find out what the person is beneath the surface. Is this making sense?
Sir, a combination of cognitive tests, cognitive ability tests, and not just ability, even there are, as you said, psychometry is the first and foremost. Apart from that, you already mentioned about personality test. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
Okay. And the cognitive tests. So these type of tests give us a fairly good idea, not the total idea to be precise enough, but yes, it gives a fairly good idea.
That's right. That's right, Bhumi. So you get a fairly good idea in terms of where the person stands, and how the person is likely to perform. So like I was saying that Southwest Airlines, they keep hiring people for attitude and not as much for skills. And they feel that if the person has the right attitude and roughly has the basic skills in place, then that person can be trained to do the work very well, whichever work it can be. Is it clear, Bhumi?
Yes, sir. And as you said, I mean, about the test, psychometry test, those are done with, those are the ones which are, mostly sought, by the large companies, but the mid scale and the small scales, they hardly go for these ones. So
That's
then,
right.
yeah, so in that case, your experience and a few other methods need to be derived to know about the person's, thought processes and values.
Exactly. So basically, see, while smaller companies may feel that those tools are expensive, they don't want to use it, but they can ensure that their recruiters are skilled on how to do interviews where they are able to understand the attitude of a person. So this can be learned. It is called competency based interviewing skills, and this can be learned. And once you have people who are skilled, they can go ahead and screen people for their attitudes. Unfortunately, most interviews simply happen. People just see that does he have the right skill, or they feel most interviewers are testing knowledge of people, and if they will ask 10 questions and see the knowledge level is okay, that the person is good. If the knowledge level is not okay, the person is not good. But that is not really proper interviewing skills how it is done. So one has to know how the interview is to be structured, how you have to understand beneath the surface, is the person uh, does the person have the right attitude or not. So those are slightly more skilled things which are required of an interviewer.
Sir, I have to ask one question. So regarding this attitude, I think this attitude is permanent. Like means at the time of recruitment, a person is very polite and very humble and very friendly, and then later on he can get changed. Means, I think that attitude can be groomed over a period. So can be tested over a period. At one point of time, testing attitude, I think it is not be means enough. Do you think that means say today I am very polite, very humble, very means later on I can get changed. So if I will be watched for a period, say 10 days or say, then can only you ascertain that what is my actual habit, what is my actual traits. In very short span of time, can you test that attitude?
Yes, Abhay. So most of these values, attitudes, etc. Generally, what happens is people do not change their attitudes, over years. And whatever personality you develop by the time you are 21 or 20, you generally largely retain that personality. But uh, like you said that if we
Add
try
one
to
thing here.
influence, yeah, please.
Like what you mentioned, ki, I may be humble at one time and another not. Those are reactions to situations. And attitudes, what you mentioned, ki ye situation mein aisa is something that is observable behavior. But those do not actually reflect competency, and that is why personality and values and attitudes are not that easy to define. कि ये humble था, ये situation में humble था और फिर बदल गया, situation बदली तो then it is not actually the value that you had observed. We just observed a behavior, and many people make this mistake of thinking that the observable behavior is attitude, but there is a huge difference between those two things.
And there are many parameters to, and also the factors influencing that particular behavior. If I would add that, checking out somebody's, one reaction or considerable reaction over a length of time, that makes a huge difference. So how do we, make that difference? Is the psychometry test the only resort?
Sir, one thing I would like to add, that whether a company which is specific to very in this type of attitude, so that company should groom that person in that frame of mind, or at the time of recruitment he has to filter that this should be the attitude, then I can only hire. Means this is to be developed at the organization, or to be means at the time of selection we can this rule out that if that person is not like that, then I will not select. So it should come in the selection process or into means later on in grooming or development.
Okay, so as I was saying that your values, attitudes, traits, motivations, these are under the surface. And by the time you are 21, these become part of your personality. And according to many psychology experts, these cannot change unless there is a life-shaking event that happens in your life, and some major change that happens in your life, because of which some of this can change. But by and large, this doesn't change. Now, when you are interviewing somebody, you may wait to see observable behavior. Okay, you may do a group exercise, you may have a group discussion, and you may observe them for their behavior. And their behavior may be camouflaged. They may behave in a certain way because they are in a formal environment, and they actually may be different. So that is the first level awareness that you get. This person's attitude is this. Now, I'm not saying that uncovering anybody's attitude is easy. It's not easy at all. Okay, but it can be learned. If you are a good interviewer, then you know how to differentiate between what this person does, what this person knows, and what this person is willing to do. Okay, so I will share an example. So basically, so let's say a person says that, I'm not very fit, but I will soon be fit because I know that I need to get up in the morning and I need to do exercise. So I've been doing that. Now I will do more of it. Now we don't know whether the attitude, the positive attitude that I will wake up early and I will go ahead and do it or not, that is something. Then the interviewer has to gauge that when was the last instance that you took an initiative and you drove that initiative on your own. When was it last that, and you have to look at consistency of replies. When the candidate is giving you a consistency of replies, you have to read between the lines. You have to see, if you see any tool, any psychometric tool or knowledge tool or general knowledge tool, when there is assessment, you will see that same question is asked 2 or 3 different ways, because they are testing the consistency of your thought pattern. So similarly, in the interview, you have to use that, in 2 3 different situations to see, is the person consistent or not. So uh, all of you are right in the sense that this is not easy. Knowledge, skills, ability, habits can be gauged very quickly through simple tests, through simple interview. But what lies beneath the surface is not easy. And you have to, if you are a very serious company, if you really want to check people's attitude, then you have to, of course, also look at past experience. Where has this person worked? Has this person been successful over there? What roles has he or she worked in? What responsibility has he done? So all of that results in your getting a good picture of the person. And sometimes they may not have the absolutely ready attitude, but like Abhay said, that can be groomed. You can see that this person is not completely ready, but this person can be groomed, provided like you have that positive culture to groom that person also. It should not be that I want the best of people, but inside the company I have a horrible culture. Then all the exercise, all the effort of getting the right talent will go for a toss, because your company does not sustain that talent or those value systems which allow that kind of a attitude to develop further. Is that making sense?
Yes, sir.
Bhumi,
Yes, sir.
Vinita?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so moving on. So here are the various selections, through various tests, and in some companies and in some profiles, you also need physical testing. But rest, there is cognitive ability testing, personality testing. So you can have Myers-Briggs type indicator, or we talked about Hogan assessments, or you have DISC assessments, you have FIRO-B. There are many tools which give you a good insight into your candidates. Uh, Ideally, some tools should not be used to reject people. They should be used more for developmental purposes. But that varies from tool to tool. Okay. So so information gathering, you can
If
have.
you have to suggest इसमें से जो आपने बोली उसमें से आप कौन से suggest करते हो practical faith in this tests?
As a tool?
Yes, sir. You are assisting in the assistant, like in the selection process of somebody, or you are assisting in training. So you want to understand the personality of the person, well, what values they have, and you have to suggest a test. Which one would you prefer? Which tool would you prefer?
So, of the tools that I'm familiar with, I would prefer DISC because DISC divides people into 4 categories. One is dominant, DISC, dominant, D for dominant, I for influencing, S for sociableness, and C for conscientiousness. So, uh, so if you are looking for a salesperson, if you are looking for a leader, then D or I goes very well. If you are looking for, let's say, a finance person or a quality person, then C profiles do very well. And these are statistically proven. If somebody is in HR or is doing marketing or people related, event management, HR, these are profiles with go with S. So you can do, uh, you know, a sense check. My sense would be do not reject people because of this, but you can strengthen your thoughts, doing a profile check. For example, earlier, I'm not sure if it does it now, but Wipro used to do a test called PAPI. And that is moment you join the company at a senior level, they would give you the PAPI test. Now, the PAPI test is a forced choice question. Like you may say that all the 4 alternatives, I don't relate to any of the alternatives. But you have to choose one saying that which is the, most relevant or maybe the least irrelevant, option. So you choose that. And then they create a framework, your psychometric profile, and they give you that feedback. And then they say that going forward, you need to develop XYZ capability and maybe underplay some of the other attributes. Maybe we feel that you are aggressive, so you have to stop being aggressive and be more assertive. So you can use PAPI or DISC, as a developmental input. For screening, I would say use your ability tests to see the ability, and then use interviewing skills to see the attitude.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Welcome. So you do information gathering, you can do ref checks, biographical, have group activities, etc. Then these are, some filters. I don't want to go into this. We have already covered most of it. Okay. So let's look at a video which is on competency-based interviewing skills. Just give me a minute.
I want to talk about competency-based interviews. Competency-based interviews are increasingly being used as the main recruitment process for new positions. Public sector organisations, widespread, are using competency-based interviews. They've developed their own competency frameworks and they assess candidates against those. Increasingly now, we're now seeing it coming into private sector organisations as well. They're a very different type of interview than candidates have previously been used to, but actually they're a really good process that candidates can prepare for and can really perform very well in that competency interview environment. The theory behind competency-based interviews is that when we interview a candidate against some agreed criteria, and our questions are specifically focused on getting them to talk about real experiences about where they've performed against these criteria, that this is a much more effective way of assessing candidates' capability. Research has shown that competency-based interviews are 5 times more effective in making the right appointments at interviews. The difference with competency-based interviews is the questions. When you're applying for a position, on your application form, on the person specification, there will be listed a number of criteria that you're going to be assessed against. And when you arrive at interview, the types of questions you're going to be asked are going to be very different from you previously being asked. Previously, for example, on communication, you might be asked, tell us about your communication skills. In a competency-based interview, you will be asked, please give us a specific time when you communicated exceptionally well. You're required to give a specific example, not to talk in general, but to give a specific example. So when you're preparing for a competency-based interview, the first thing you need to do is you need to identify the competencies of the role. And this information will be on the job pack, it'll be on the person's specification. So you need to identify what those competencies are, and then you need to start drawing back from previous experience and thinking about what examples you can deliver at interview that will demonstrate those competencies. So what's your example on teamwork, on leadership, on strategic thinking, on managing in a difficult situation? These are the type of examples that you need to start to work on in terms of preparation for your interview. Now, there's a way that you can structure that most effectively, and that's by using share as a structure. So when we talk about share, we're talking about 5 things. We're talking about, firstly, you describing the situation. So what was the situation when you demonstrated effective teamwork? H is the hindrance. What were the challenges? It's really important when you give your competency-based answers that you tell them about the challenges. If you don't tell them about the challenges in the example, then they're not going to know how good you were in terms of the results you achieved at the end. Then you talk about the action. What action did you take? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You list the action you took to demonstrate that good teamwork. The R in share is the result. What was the result? What did you achieve from that example? And the E in share is evaluation. What did you learn? It's really important to demonstrate your learning because it's your learning that you will bring to this position. That's what they'll be interested in. When you get into your interview situation and you have all your examples prepared in the share model, it can be really useful, again, to have a very simple structure on answering these types of questions. Remember the rule of 3. We like a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a logical way to deliver information. So with your competency-based answer, a very simple structure you can use is, for example, your panel asks you a question. Tell us about a time when you communicated a challenging message. So your introduction is, I realise that communication is going to be really important in this particular role. And I've had many experiences in previous roles where I've had to communicate challenging messages to individuals and teams. But let me tell you about this one specific time. You've introduced. Now you use your share example. So you take them through your share example on communication. You talk about the situation, the hindrance, the challenges, the action, the result, and the evaluation. When you finish delivering your share, you then move on to your conclusion. And what can be really useful to do in your conclusion is to summarise 3 points that make you an exceptional communicator in challenging situations. So, in your ending piece, in summary, I know that this example demonstrates my strengths in communicating in challenging circumstances. And I know what makes me a good communicator in these types of situations is that I take on board all the team's needs, I listen very carefully to concerns and ideas, and then I evaluate the effect of communication. So we've got our beginning, our middle, and the end. This is how we approach competency-based questions.
Okay, so you saw that and how uh, you look for actual experiences, you look for what was the impact, what did you learn from it. So much more detailed, much more in depth than typically what we tend to do. So any thoughts, any observations on the video?
Sir, sir, it brought clarity in how to ask questions, so to give example of situation you handle. So like that, so it was very good in bringing clarity.
Great, wonderful. Okay, let's move on. So let's do short exercise. So So we have this company called Tinplate, which is a 10,000 crore company and in the business of engineering, procurement and construction, EPC. It's part of a premier group of the country and it has about 4,500 employees on its rolls and has 12,000 employees who are off rolls, but work closely with its employees, 80% of them being blue collar workers. So TPL gets new contract. Now they get a new contract, which is an engineering challenge, namely to create a blast furnace for the client, who is a steel manufacturing giant in the country. This project is called Blue Diamond. So TPL has received this contract after facing stiff competition and won it basis very competitive pricing. So that means there is a cost pressure and committing to a project timeline of 36 months, which, if not met, will result in TPL having to pay penalties, just as an early delivery will result in rewards. So if they deliver early, they will get rewards. If they deliver beyond the deadline, they will be penalized. So you can see that there is a company which is very large and it has got uh, 4,500 employees on its rolls and 12,000 employees who are off rolls, which means that they are on contract. And 80% of them are blue collar workers, which means that they are working in the sites, they are workers. And now it has won a project. So what we need to do is we will divide ourselves in two teams. Team A, you are the MD, CHRO, and the leadership team of TPL, and you have to draw a talent acquisition plan. So you can just talk about 4 or 5 important things that you will look for in your talent acquisition plan for the Blue Diamond project, which is valued at 1,000 crores. So please create a talent acquisition plan for the same. And TPL is an easygoing employer in a competitive market. So remember, the culture is easygoing, and the MD and the CHRO have to create a leadership plan at a plan for this particular project, this new project that has come. How do they want to acquire talent for this? Team B, you are the HR manager and her team for Project Blue Diamond. So you are part of the project team and you have to create a talent acquisition plan for this particular project. And you need a headcount of 900 employees in 1 year. It is very challenging project and the TA plan has to reflect that challenge. On time delivery is need of the hour. So basically two teams, one is a senior team, which will work on what are the things they will look for in the talent acquisition plan, what all things they should have, and team B, which will also plan that, but they are at a manager and below manager level. So what will they plan? So very similar tasks, but small differences. Okay. So I will divide you into two groups and team A and team B. And then you can.
Can you just go back to that earlier slide?
This one?
Yes, sir. We'll just take a screenshot while you do that, so we can refer
Sure.
to it.
Sure. Done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can take a screenshot of this also.
Done. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
this is a construction company, and the skills. This entire combination we want along with this is what we planned. That is what I've written down. Anybody would like to add something? This is all from my side. You can see my screen, right? So that is what I have done here. That is what we have done, sir.
Okay.
And anybody can add to it.
Okay, I think that is very comprehensive. Anybody would like to add? So good, a good number of points shared by Team B. Okay, excellent. So I think you know these are some key pointers which I was looking for, and I think you have more or less covered this. The numbers to be screened, the kind of talent to be acquired, approximate cost, any backup plan for contingencies if you miss out on timelines, then how to make up for it, interlinkages of company hiring and project hiring, because team A, the leadership team, was looking at the broader company hiring perspective, backfill versus ramp up. So you will also have people leaving you, so how do you do the backfill while you are also ramping up? How many people you want to, the 900 people, do you want all of them to be from outside, or do you want to align some people from within the company, some older people who can recreate the values and the culture of the company in this project? uh, Hire for attitude, train for skill. So what is the attitude you look for? So I think both teams talked about the attitude, the urgency, ability to work fast, and people should be aligned to your internal competency model. So great. I think thanks for working that out. So I hope you found this session useful.
So just one question, like what is the major difference between team A and team B that we did? Like what was what is the expectation, the major difference that you wanted the team A to think on the point and team B?
So team A would typically focus on the broader requirements of the cultural alignment, the competencies that they're looking at, whether they are aligned to the competency model or not. Uh, while team B would be more granular, which is actually the case, which you showed, that you thought more in terms of hiring, how to get the 900 numbers. So you were closer to the project, while team A was very broad in terms of the hiring strategy.
Sir, would this single project actually change, because 900 is a very small number as far as 16,500 employees are concerned. So would this
Right.
kind of project really change the TA plans for a company?
It would not. The tier plans would continue for the company as a whole. Like we talked about 4,500 employees on rolls and 12,000 employees who are on contract. So that larger company would continue, but they have multiple projects, and this project is needs about 900 people. So they would break it up in terms of months, weeks, and quarters as to when the people are really required. So, for example, any talent acquisition plan, you will see that there is a spike in certain quarters, and there is a dip in certain quarters, because the effort that will be required, will be around certain phases of the project. So your talent acquisition plan has to be aligned to the project deliveries, because you will not want to hire a lot of people and make them sit on the bench. You are incurring extra cost, if you are doing that. Plus, you also have to, one of the questions you could have asked is, what is the attrition rate at this company? This case study, actually, they had an attrition rate of 10%. So 10% means that 16,000 people. So every month, every year, actually, they are hiring even 1,600 people just to back up the people they are losing every year. You know, so therefore, those are, so the team B was more granular, because you are aligned to the project, while team A is the leadership team, and they were thinking more in terms of the broader dimensions.
The team A would really not change the talent acquisition plan for the project.
Yeah.
Because it is just as good as the routine work only for them, because they are just 900 people. So उनको बहुत फर्क नहीं पड़ता है.
Exactly. उनके लिए एक और प्रोजेक्ट है ये, और वैसे भी रेगुलरली वो हायर करते रहते हैं, हर साल हर महीने उनका हायरिंग प्लान चलता रहता है, तो इसलिए उनके लिए कुछ खास डिफरेंस नहीं पड़ता, बट फॉर द प्रोजेक्ट टीम इट इज लाइफ एंड डेथ.
And would also be require this knowledge about, before answering the case study, ki what is the people that they want, the quality and the KSA required from the new recruitment.
Yes, that would have helped, because as we said that, this is a engineering and construction company. So the KSA that you require, you would have guessed that they would need civil engineers, they would need planners, they would need architects, and then they would need mass of workers.
Okay, so sir, if we get this kind of case study, we make assumptions कि this is assumed, ऐसे करके answer लिख देते हैं. What do we do?
Yes, so आपको जो भी आप कह रहे हो, you can say that this is based on the assumption X. So you can mention the assumption also.
Okay.
Sir, my question is that even though this project is not a big project, looking at the total strength, but there can be specific requirements of talent or skills which may not be available with the company. And for that, even this project team has to look for this.
Yes, so Rakesh, as you saw that, one of the points is make or buy. Do we get talent from inside the company, or do we hire talent from outside? So there will be some profiles which they do not have inside the company. Like this project is specifically for a client, which is a steel manufacturing giant. So there may be some profiles which they do not have. Actually, this is a real, this is taken from a real example or real situation that I worked on. And this project was with Tata Projects, and our client was Tata Steel. And Tata Steel wanted a blast furnace to be created. And so we had to hire additional people for the blast furnace project, which was going on in Kalinganagar, Odisha.
Because similarly in metro also, for making the tunnel, they call specialists from foreign also.
Yeah.
So that way project needs many things which are specific to the project, and they are very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. For metro, in my previous company, we were doing the metro project for Lucknow, for Ahmedabad, and we had to, get equipment from Germany, which is a drilling equipment which can drill vertically. It can just stand anywhere and it can go, 30 feet under the ground quickly. So all those experts, the machinery, all of that had to be imported for the project.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. I hope you found this useful. We will connect again, same time next week. Meanwhile, have a great week ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank